The 136th Canton Fair Phase 1 concluded on October 19th. Known as the barometer of China's foreign trade, how did this year's fair perform? Let's take a look at footage from exhibitors and hear their honest opinions.
Follow
me, everyone. Look at this year's Canton Fair. It's just pitiful how few people there are. What can you do?
Today is the second day of the Canton Fair, and I'd like to share my personal experience. Normally, based on past events, the second and third days of Phase 1 are usually the busiest. But this year, it was quite different. It felt very quiet. After 4 p.m., you could hardly see anyone around. In previous years, it used to be packed with people, and businesses and customers would be busy negotiating deals. But this time, it just felt off. Moreover, most of the customers we saw were from regions like Africa, Russia, and Central Asia, while there were hardly any from Europe or the US. At our booth, you could count the number of European and American customers we met on one hand. This is a stark contrast to the usual crowds of Western customers we used to see. Let's talk about the flight prices too. During the fair, flights to Hangzhou and Shanghai were only around 200 to 300 yuan. That's not normal at all. Usually, during the Canton Fair, travel is busy and ticket prices go up, but now they're surprisingly low. Could this be a sign that the turnout this time wasn't as high as expected? Also, even though the fair was already underway, I kept seeing lots of hotel booking ads. Does this mean that hotels aren't fully booked? It's confusing. Normally, it's hard to find a room this time of year, but this situation makes me wonder if fewer people attended this year. Another exhibitor recorded footage from the third afternoon of the Canton Fair, showing the scene at the venue.
They say there will be more customers at 2:30 in the afternoon, but it's just a bunch of Chinese sales reps from other suppliers. They're either selling parts or from upstream suppliers. Look around, not a single person here.
Earlier, this exhibitor's friend mentioned that by 11 a.m., there still hadn't been any customers. He hoped that things would pick up in the afternoon, but he was left disappointed. On the fourth day, he uploaded another video.
It's 4:30 on the fourth day, and it's all Chinese suppliers. You can't see a single foreigner anymore.
This clip was filmed by Mr. Liu, a seller of protective equipment from Hebei, showing the fair on October 18th. The entire hallway looks empty, not a single visitor in sight, with exhibitors just aimlessly scrolling on their phones. Business was so slow that Mr. Liu planned to pack up and head home even before the end of Phase 1. A young businessman also posted a video, saying that there were hardly any visitors at the Canton Fair, making it hard for him to sell the many samples he had brought.
The Canton Fair is open again, but there are hardly any clients from Europe and America. Meanwhile, there are plenty from Southeast Asia, but honestly, Southeast Asian clients are not very reliable when it comes to keeping agreements. Just look around, it's practically deserted. The Canton Fair has no one here. We've got a lot of leftover samples and products from this round.
One exhibitor, who was packing up his booth overnight to leave early, said he never expected that the market would be this bleak. Another exhibitor expressed his frustration about how the Canton Fair had turned out this year. There were either no people at all, or when there were visitors, they would just look around without discussing any business deals. Despite manning his booth for several days, he didn't receive a single order. He lamented that the booth fee, which cost him over 100,000 yuan, was impossible to recover. A manufacturer specializing in exporting aviation-grade aluminum profiles and aluminum products also shared his concerns. Without customers from Europe or the US, the situation for foreign trade has become even more challenging.
This year's Canton Fair has been tough. There are way fewer clients from Europe and America, and they're mostly just browsing, not asking much. I spoke to many exhibitors, and they said it's due to factors like anti-dumping policies, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and economic downturn. As a result, these countries have cut back their purchasing needs significantly. Most of the clients this time are from Belt and Road countries, the Middle East, and Africa, but doing business with them is harder. They either want lower prices or longer timelines. Do you all think it's difficult to be in foreign trade now?
One commentator remarked, Without European and American customers, what do these African, Asian, and Latin American clients even add up to? Just one American market is worth several times more than all these countries combined, so of course exports are a mess. Another user responded, the profits from dealing with European and American clients are also much higher than from these regions. In business, it's best to work with wealthy customers. However, another commenter took a more practical view, saying, given the current global situation China is facing, having customers at all is already a good thing. There's no room to be picky.
Recently, there's a joke going around about the Canton Fair. The tiers of the Canton Fair. How much? Too much. Thank you very much. It sounds like a joke, but it really reflects the deep frustration felt by all businesses involved in the cross-border B2B trade.
The man's commentary reflects a common issue at this year's Canton Fair. Most of the attendees are from developing countries, and they're primarily focused on pricing. Luke, the owner of a company specializing in mid to high-end appliances, shared his experience over several days at the fair. His story mirrors what many other businesses experienced. On the first day, things went as he had expected. There was a feeling that it was going to be quiet. Luke's company mainly targets markets in Europe, the US, Australia, and Russia, but there were no visitors from the US or Australia that day. From Europe, only 2 existing customers showed up, and one was actually an employee from their Hong Kong office, there to discuss changes in payment terms. Basically, he was there to issue Luke an ultimatum. In contrast, there were more old and new customers from Russia and Ukraine, but Luke wasn't very keen on the Russian market due to its fluctuating demand, payment issues, and inventory pressures. He didn't want to take on more risk. Visitors from the Middle East, Africa, and Southeast Asia were more frequent, but their demands were typically small, like just 1 or 2 units, which can be quite frustrating. Notably, there were far fewer Korean visitors compared to past fairs, which was puzzling. On the second day, Luke's anxiety grew. Although there was a slight increase in foot traffic, his booth still saw few visitors, particularly no new clients from the US. European customers only trickled in, while Russians dominated. But no substantial orders were secured. A slight relief came when he managed to get a small cash order worth 6,600 yuan and received gifts from customers from Vietnam and the UAE. After 5 days at the Canton Fair, Luke had some takeaways. First, the fair seemed to have shifted from being a platform for expanding new business to one focused on maintaining relationships with existing clients. Second, there's a trend of orders becoming more fragmented. Clients who used to place orders for a large shipping container are now asking if they can small orders for just 20 or 50 units, which drives up costs. Another clear shift was the near absence of American buyers. Previously, Jewish merchants and Israeli buyers were a common sight, but not this time. European buyers were also few, while Russian customers became the main source of business. However, considering the instability of the Russian market, once demand is saturated, orders can plummet sharply. Middle Eastern customers visited frequently, but seemed more focused on comparing prices, with little real intent to place orders. Moreover, competition is getting tougher. In the past, there were only 2 other exhibitors in Luke's line of business, but now there are 15, with prices dropping sharply. Some companies even quoted prices lower than raw material costs, which was shocking. In terms of return on investment, this year's fair barely covered the costs. It was more about making their presence known. Given this, Luke felt that instead of spending hundreds of thousands of yuan on the fair, it would be better to use that budget to visit clients abroad, which might yield better results. He also suggested that the Canton Fair be held once a year rather than twice, as the current frequency doesn't seem necessary. Many people are discussing why the Canton Fair has flopped. A trade service veteran with 22 years of experience shared her analysis. The first phase of the Canton Fair has concluded, but many people feel this once major trade fair for the foreign trade industry seems to have lost its buzz this year. In previous years, news about the Canton Fair spread like wildfire even before it began, and it wasn't just a topic among those in foreign trade, it was widely discussed across society. But now, aside from the announcement of the opening, there's much less information about the fair. Apart from the organizers' more conservative approach to promotion, many believe it's also because the booth fees have always been quite high. Renting a booth plus decoration costs can easily run into the hundreds of thousands of yuan, making it anything but ordinary. The results of participating can vary greatly. For instance, the energy storage sector was bustling this year, with some companies receiving over 1,000 business cards in a single day, while the lighting sector was relatively quiet. This has made many foreign trade businesses more cautious about their investments in the fair. She believes that the lower-than-expected outcomes were due to the fact that most of the customers this time came from countries along the Belt and Road, as well as the Middle East, Africa, and other regions. Clients from these countries don't usually require products with high technical standards. Their main focus is on price and payment terms. For them, basic products that work are enough. If the quality is acceptable and the price is lower, that's even better. Moreover, due to factors like anti-dumping measures, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and economic downturns, many buyers have significantly reduced their purchasing needs. As a result, most of the visitors were there to observe rather than make actual purchases. There were lots of onlookers, but few who placed orders. Held twice a year, the Canton Fair is China's largest, oldest, and most comprehensive international trade exhibition, seen as an essential platform for both domestic and foreign buyers and exhibitors. It's well known that the economic achievements China has made over the past few decades, especially the growth of its manufacturing sector and its status as the world's factory, have been highly dependent on foreign trade. Therefore, the Chinese authorities have always placed great importance on this large-scale trade fair aimed primarily at foreign buyers. However, in recent years, due to factors like the US-China trade war and the shift in global supply chains, the effectiveness of the Canton Fair has been steadily declining. Since last year in particular, exhibitors have noticed that European and American customers were no longer attending. Instead, the fair has seen more buyers from Russia, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and Latin America, countries along the Belt and Road. These clients are typically very price-sensitive, often smaller customers or even retailers. They're cautious about placing orders and tend to buy basic, lower-cost products, leaving many Chinese exhibitors quite disappointed. Given the Canton Fair's size and prestige, it sets high standards for exhibitors, making it one of the most expensive international trade fairs to participate in. This blogger shared some inside information about the fair.
The Canton Fair is the most expensive international exhibition, no exceptions. Today, I'm going to share some little-known facts about it. Many people wonder how much it costs to attend the Canton Fair. Big companies actually get some support for standard booths, costing about 20,000 to 50,000 yuan, which isn't too bad. But for small and medium enterprises, under the current allocation system, they can't apply for a booth through regular channels. They end up having to buy one on the market at 3 or 6 times the regular price. Another secret is that it always looks crowded, whether it's Phase 1, Phase 2, or Phase 3, but in reality since 2005, the number of foreign buyers has stayed around 200,000. So no matter how bustling it looks, the actual number of foreign buyers hasn't changed much. The reason it seems so busy is because there are more Chinese visitors each time, most of whom are exhibitors or fake buyers just there to check things out. The third secret is that many of the foreign buyers coming to the Canton Fair are just there to compare prices. Actual deals are rare. While it may look like everyone's negotiating orders, most of it is just old clients reordering from their usual suppliers. It's actually quite hard for exhibitors to secure new clients. Most interactions end without any success.
Exhibitors have compared their results from recent years, revealing the decline of the Canton Fair and the changes over time.
6 years ago, when I attended the Canton Fair, I get about 150 business cards in 3 days. Within 3 months, I could usually close deals, gaining 5 to 6 new clients each session. 4 years ago, I started going to more specialized trade shows. I get around 100 cards in 3 days, and it took about 6 months to close deals, getting 2 to 3 new clients each time. But now, even when I keep attending these specialized shows, I barely get 60 cards in 3 days, and I haven't had any new clients after the events. In short, trade shows are becoming less and less effective.
Although the second phase of the fair is still ongoing, feedback from the end of the first phase has not been encouraging. The first phase mainly featured sectors like electronics and home appliances, industrial manufacturing, vehicles and parts, lighting, and hardware tools. Among them, electric vehicles, lithium batteries, and solar panels, referred to as the three new of exports, were the focal points. These are industries that the Chinese government has heavily promoted and takes pride in as new pillars of export. However, in the first 3 quarters of this year, exports of these new products fell by 5.1% year-on-year, a sharp decline compared to last year's growth. According to a recent statement by Liu Daliang, a spokesperson for China's General Administration of Customs, China exported 757 billion yuan worth of electric vehicles, lithium batteries, and photovoltaic products in the first 3 quarters of 2024, accounting for 4.1% of total exports. The new 3 products were sold to over 200 countries and regions. At first glance, China's export of these products might seem robust, but the reality is more complex. Public data shows that in the first 3 quarters of 2023, combined exports of the new 3 reached almost 800 billion yuan, growing 41.7% year-on-year, making up 4.5% of total exports. Comparatively, this year's 757 billion yuan in exports reflects a 5.1% decrease from last year, and their share of total exports also dropped by 0.4%. Looking up data from China's General Administration of Customs, September figures showed declines in exports of lithium and solar batteries. Lithium-ion battery exports fell by 10.6% year-on-year in September, with a cumulative decrease of 8.5% from January to September. Solar panel exports in September fell by 40.7% year-on-year, and cumulative exports for the first 9 months dropped by 30%. Although electric vehicle exports in September still grew by 9.5% year-on-year, this was a steep drop from April's 71%. And the overall trend was declining. September brought more bad news, with data showing a slowdown in industrial output and retail sales, sharp declines in stock and real estate investment, rising unemployment, and persistent deflationary pressures. Even China's key economic engine, exports, unexpectedly slowed that month, with export growth falling to 2.4% year-on-year, down sharply from 8.7% in August. This was the slowest growth rate since April. This is a significant blow to an already struggling Chinese economy. Despite this, the Chinese government has been reluctant to launch large-scale stimulus plans to revive the economy. Instead, they continue to double down on investments in advanced manufacturing and an export-driven growth strategy. However, as trade tensions with the US and Europe intensify, these overseas markets are becoming increasingly resistant to, and less capable of, absorbing high-value Chinese exports. Walter Russell Mead, a columnist for the Wall Street Journal, pointed out that China's unwavering support for its export-driven manufacturing strategy has led it down a path of diminishing returns. It has also opened China to growing foreign hostility. He argued that China is caught in an economic trap of its own making. He explained that China's over-reliance on export-driven growth has created a massive industrial economy dependent on foreign raw materials, energy, and market access. Yet, the Chinese government's geopolitical ambitions and the exponential growth of its industrial exports have made foreign partners wary. The composition of foreign buyers at this year's trade fair also suggests that Western countries have clearly taken steps to accelerate their decoupling from China's supply chain. As this trend develops, China's foreign trade will become increasingly dependent on Russia and countries along the Belt and Road. However, this shift is an unwelcome change for many Chinese businesses. Having long relied on the US and European markets, they now face the challenges of supply chain restructuring, shrinking orders, and intense market competition. Quickly pivoting to other markets is not easy, especially against the backdrop of weakening global demand, which is proving to be a near-fatal blow for these companies.